Welcome to Carren's Couch. This week, we're talking all things divorce. Let's just get into it. Let's just put it out there. We're talking all things divorce. Now, if you haven't been through a divorce, you know someone who has. And what's the biggest issue that occurs inside of a divorce? It's the dollars. It's the moolah. It's how am I going to split it? How are we going to split it? Is it going to be fair? And you know what? For most divorces, it's ugly and it's nasty and it lands up in this big tug of war from this is mine and that's yours, and then we go to war for it and we fight for what we think we deserve, and it all lands up completely pear-shaped. You know, the only person who usually wins in any kind of divorce case is the solicitor or our lawyers, because their fees are so exorbitant. But it's only because we can't get our heads around how to go through a divorce, because let's face it, sometimes it happens. As much as we don't want it to, and it's never the plan, it's never intentional, sometimes shizzle happens. So we've got to have an idea as to how we can handle our finances and how we can actually handle the breakup in the most loving way that lands up being transformational for all of us. Because think about a divorce. It's a massive change in your life and a massive change in your children's life. And it's not just us. It's everybody that gets affected. So who better to invite to the couch to talk about how we can practically go through a divorce without tearing each other's heads off and make it an experience that actually feels palatable and doesn't leave us wounded and beaten up? Who better to invite to the couch than the amazing money man, Peter Audet? Welcome to the couch, sir.
How are you going?
I'm uber cool, uber cool. So when it comes to divorce, Pete, I know that this is something that you've got some really amazing information to share with us about today. There are lots of people who are in various stages of divorce.
Yeah. And
it is always an ugly experience, or anticipated to be an ugly experience. Start from the beginning. Where does it go wrong? And I don't mean in terms of the relationship, because I think that's another show. Yeah. That's another 5 shows. But I mean in terms of where does it go wrong for us when we decide that we don't want to be with somebody anymore, or they decide they don't want to be with us? How does it all turn so pear-shaped?
There's so many different angles that you could think about that question in terms of your answer, and I'll try and pick through the main ones that I've seen, because I think that probably makes the most sense. People often become when someone separates or is getting divorced, it's a very emotional time.
Very emotional.
And it can be a place where people seek to try and score some points, with a hope, I suppose, at times of making themselves feel a bit better.
And especially if somebody's been hurt. I know I've had, divorce rates are fairly prevalent. So I think we all know people who've been divorced if we haven't been divorced ourselves.
Yeah.
I think sometimes if you've been hurt, you can use the divorce as a way to get the person back. You hurt me, and I'm going to get you back, and it's going to hit you in the hip pocket.
And money's a great lever.
Yeah.
For driving discourse between people. You want something, I want something. I'll feel better if I get more than you. That's one thing that you see quite a bit. Typically, the main breadwinner feels as though they are deserving of the most. I made it, I should be able to keep it. You see that a lot. There's an element of equity that the legal system applies to it to try and protect fairness, not necessarily to protect men from women or women from men, but
fairness
to create some equality around the way that they deal with children now. They tend to start with 50-50 and work backwards from joint custody to where are you going to be, rather than saying the children always go with the mother and the father has to fight to see them.
Yeah, right.
So there seems to nowadays be a lot more of a beginning point in the middle and then working their way back. And because it's a time of duress, and you might remember from our previous discussions, we've talked about this idea of when you go to make a financial decision and you're swept up in the positive emotion.
Yes. Yeah.
I always say, breathe, take a breath,
Yeah.
and think about that decision. You can just imagine if some of these decisions are being made after a separation, and there's children, and there's an element of very real nervousness about your capacity to maintain a happy and healthy level of income, of financial security. All those things are going through your head.
It's probably one of the primary things, along with the care of the kids, is like, how am I going to survive now?
Yeah.
I've just lost everything. And I think that's the first thing that most people think. I got divorced very young. I got married and divorced very young. But we'd accumulated a little bit of stuff. But that was the first thing that I thought of. It was, how on earth, now that I've lost everything I've worked so hard for, how on earth is this going to work for me now?
Yeah.
It's a really tough time, because when emotions are high, I believe intelligence is low. You can't think clearly when you're so emotional.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's great. But where you are with it then, what we would hope to try and get people to do, I do some work with a family law firm, and we try and intervene quite early and try and get people to take a breath and try and get them to stop and almost like reset the concrete.
Yeah,
because all that wonderful foundation of life that you've had, that possibly you've relied on for 10 years or 20 years or longer, is suddenly someone comes in with a jackhammer and digs it all up and says that everything that everything that you had and everything that you relied on suddenly isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So without that foundation, you've created, instead of, we talked before about that beautiful positive vibe of buying a beautiful house or a beautiful pair of shoes or something.
It's all about the shoes.
This is all the negative. This is all disturbing and everything's wrong and how am I going to survive? And so you need to bring people back, and Tony Phillips, who I've done some work with, had given me some great insights into things that he says when he talks to people. He's the family lawyer.
Yeah.
He said to me that he doesn't do castrations and crucifixions.
Oh, wow.
So if you've come with
and it feels like that too.
If you've come with your boxing gloves on, then you're in the wrong place. Because his view, which I think was really great, he said, is that it's an opportunity for a new start. And if you start with the first thing that you do is bring people back down and say, this is an opportunity for a new start. And everything that was there before certainly is whilst it feels chaotic, it's also like hitting the refresh button, where you stop and you go, I've got a chance now to choose what the next part of my life looks like. You're in this unique set of circumstances where often you accumulate things over time. Suddenly that's stopped, whether you chose that or not. And that can be a different conversation. But nevertheless, that's where you are. So you need to stop and take a breath and say, what's important to me now? Yeah. What's important to me moving forward? Yeah. And recategorize the stuff. Yeah. In order of what you need today in the new world. So instead of deciding, as many people do, that I have to stay in the family home. This is where I feel safe. This is where I have the most security. I'm not moving. I'm not the one that did the wrong thing. Yeah. He or she chose to leave. I'm staying put. No matter what, no one's getting me out of this house. That's such a narrow... I think everybody the story must be the same in most cases, because I know... It's not the first time you've heard that, is it? No, I was going to say, I've heard that 5 or 6 times with people that I know. I'm not leaving. But then what you really do need to consider is... I'm now on my own, with or without children, quite possibly. Yeah. What are my new goals and financial objectives? What are my new life goals? Yeah. Where do I want my life to be? Where am I going to be? Is my career going to change? Do I need to re-engage with employment if I've been out of the workforce? And does the home that I'm in now, whether it's fair or unfair, is it the right place to be? Can I afford to be there? Is it practical for me to be there? You don't necessarily have to answer that single question. What you really have to do is answer all the questions. Here I am today. Here are my new set of of potential resources at my disposal in the matrimonial pool. And here's what I want to achieve over a period of time. What do I need?
Yeah.
Don't just take what you think
will hurt the other person. Or
stop and think about where I will be. And I think if you do that, then what starts to happen, again, in my view, having seen this a few times, is you get to dictate bringing some logic back into the conversation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like calming the conversation down. I'll keep using Tony as a great example, but he said to me, and it makes so much sense in the way he said it, he said, it's very, very hard once you've put the war paint on to take it off.
I agree.
So once you put it on, the other side puts theirs on. And it's really, really hard to talk either side down.
This is amazing coming from a family lawyer. I mean, he's really got his head screwed on in terms of what's going to be the best outcomes for the people, because you're so right. And just, beyond the money side of things, from a psychological perspective, to be able to say to a person, stop and breathe.
Yeah.
Nobody takes any action right now until we stop and we breathe and we reassess the situation. Whether we chose it or we didn't, it is a new reality, and we have to create a new normal with it, rather than trying to hold on to something that's all in the past as of now, which then allows the person, as you say, to be able to have a fresh start and consider what they want from that platform, rather than anything else, as you say, with the war paint on, because that is tradition. I mean, that's what happens.
It does. And look, it's an emotional time, and as I said before, it's a time where you've been destabilised.
Yeah, totally.
And so when people are destabilised, they become emotional and they become adversarial, I suppose is the word, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They become aggressive and they want things. The truth is very important. You have to be honest with yourself. And we've talked about this before, about this idea of growing up a bit. You can't turn it into an emotional childish tantrum of what I get and what I don't, and it's unfair. It's maybe you have to burn that energy off at some stage. But it's not productive. Eventually you have to park it and say, you know what, maybe it is unfair, maybe we would have been better off staying together, but this has happened, and now I have to make some solid decisions, and I need to accept some things that I thought would eventuate that now won't. That there were things we were going to do together that we're now not going to do. And there's going to be economic outcomes that are no longer possible. And you need to accept it and make rational decisions in the context of what your new norm is. Not the old one. Again, you park the history and say, well, that was, you have to close the book on that and take a breath and say, right, what do I want to do now? And sometimes the greatest thing to do is not very much for the first 12 months. Just take a breath and say, let's let the dust settle and just work through where we want to be.
God, that would just be an amazing conversation to be able to have with somebody that, and I always think of it, if you've been married to somebody, you married them for a reason. You did love them, and you did love each other, and you were together for a reason. And just because the circumstances may have changed or something's changed in the relationship doesn't make one or the other a bad person, therefore needing to be punished. And I think taking that time, and if it is 12 months or 6 months or whatever it is, to take that time and say, well, what do we both want to get out of this? Because prior to the divorce or prior to the separation, you probably would have had that conversation with each other because the lines of communication were open. But after the separation, there just seems to be this mindset shift in that you need to pay.
The thing from personally, in my job as a financial advisor, the thing I really enjoy doing is being a great sounding board for people.
I'll bet you are.
When they talk to make decisions, because often when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you're just very used to this idea of discussing things with people. I've got a lady at the moment who's buying a house and she's negotiating with the builder, and she's never bought a house on her own before. And so we are working through that together. We're just working out what price we want to pay. We're going through the normal processes where she has a support person for a large financial decision that she needs to make. And it's I find it really personally, I mean, I love helping people, and it's just it's at that time where you can step up and really support someone emotionally at the same time, because it really is. I understand that we, financial advisors, we give advice and there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation, but it's, for me, it's all about the emotion. It's all about the payoff of helping someone and supporting them as they re-establish new norms for themselves about how they make decisions, about where they're going to be. And this particular person, it's been 3 years and quite a long and protracted process of settlement. And we've kind of walked through this journey together, and it's been, I think, equally satisfying on both sides, because all the things that we planned to do, the timeframes that we planned around when we were going to make decisions, those milestones have arrived, and we're having these meetings saying, right, here we are, and it's time to buy that house. Let's go shopping. She had some health concerns and wasn't able to drive for a period of time, and she's got back on her feet in terms of her great state of health that she's in, and she's got a car and her independence again. And so you get through the other side of this process, and you see someone who's stopped and decided that they would take some advice, but make some really sensible decisions for them.
Yeah,
not for anyone else, but for them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need someone standing beside you saying it's okay to look after you.
Yeah.
Because, when you've got children and the dissolution of a marriage, this whole emotion about guilt, about leaving the family home or letting the children down, or we take a lot of responsibility for our own behaviour a lot of the time in our lives. And I think that it's okay at times to remind people that part of this process is, just like you always say, it's about being okay about yourself, about deciding what's important for you and making great considered decisions about what you get to control where your life is going to be. And once you decide to do it that way, and I think you can even sense it as we talk about it, all the chaos disappears.
Absolutely. I'm feeling incredibly calm about a fairly tumultuous topic. And it's quite refreshing, actually, because, it just is based on the way that you're approaching it and your advice on it. The thing that I'm really intrigued about is that I don't know if many people know that through financial advice and the kind of services that you provide, and that there are family lawyers out there who will be the person who runs alongside you. If you are going through a divorce, or you've been through a divorce, or it's impending, there's people like you guys that will actually run alongside people. I don't know that the awareness is there.
I think it's growing. I'm in the middle of writing a white paper on it that we're going to publish to the extent that we're going to use it for people as they walk in the door of the law firm. With that disarray, I suppose, to get them to sit down and say, look, take this away. It'll be a 20-minute read.
Yeah.
But just here's some rules of engagement around how to make some decisions. Because again, it's not ever... Advice is always bespoke. It's always for the individual.
Yeah.
But the decision-making process and the frame of mind, these are all great generic muscles that you can build around understanding what you're going to be going through and coaching people around this idea of a really calm, rational conversation and about being present of mind as opposed to being in this aggressive, chaotic stance, I suppose it is, with the war paint on. I always imagine
you can see it.
You can just see it, like the hockey players getting ready to rumble, and it's... And you're right. I think I've met a lot of family lawyers, and I think you would be quite surprised to realise just how many of them would rather see a separation and a divorce run smoothly.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them really... I don't think many of them set out to get you in court and fight. I really don't. I really think the great ones that I've met really care about the people and about getting a fair result for them and helping them through that negotiation process. And my experience has been, more often than not, it's not the lawyers that create the chaos.
Who is it?
It's mum and dad rolling their sleeves up and going
Right,
for
you
it.
are.
I've seen, in fact, the worst one I've ever seen was two people that I had as clients for many years first, who called me into a meeting and said, we've decided to separate.
Right.
And it's very amicable and we're very comfortable and we've decided that this is what we're going to do. We're going to separate the assets really easily and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And then it went from that to an incident with a samurai sword before it was over.
Oh my goodness.
And I had introduced them to both lawyers on both sides and said, this is going to be a really easy one. They're in a really good space about it. And then it just didn't. And it was not, the lawyers were desperate for calm. And it was extremely difficult because did they put the war paint on.
Aye.
So it very much, my experience has been that the lawyer doesn't put the war paint on, you do.
So it's when it does turn pear-shaped, it's definitely the two parties just refusing to see it in the other way.
Look, there's a broad spectrum. I mean, make no mistake, there's clearly going to be legal representation that you can get where people are very aggressive. But
absolutely.
My view would be that is not a healthy way of dealing with this sort of situation, and that there's that if you can take the time to think about what you need and as best you can work on that basis, it's a great start. And if you can avoid the noise and stick to what you need and be aware of it, set new goals and shape what you want to get from your separation based on your goals and what your needs are, then regardless of how the rest of it goes, you're at least focused on your best outcome and not some sort of adversarial process of just trying to extract assets for gain or for scoring points.
Yeah.
I suppose that's a good way of thinking about it.
In your experience with this approach, what's the best result that you've had where somebody's actually taken this on board and there's been a really great outcome for both parties? I mean, do you find that...
I'm laughing at Melinda's pulling faces in the background.
Do you find that most people, when they come to you, are they fairly inflamed? You talk to them, give them this sort of advice, it calms them down, and then they do get really good responses, they do get really good outcomes?
Yeah, I must admit, a lot of the time you end up with, selfishly I'm going to say is, I think I end up with my side being really calm and we watch the clowns on the other end go bananas and you just kind of have to wait for them to...
So both parties don't come to you, just one side comes?
Just one side.
Just one side comes?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So...
well, that's got to be tough.
But this is about controlling the controllables. You are in charge of your own behaviour and more importantly, and I think this is one of my rules that I live my life by, is you're in charge of how you react to the circumstances as they're presented to you. I read Viktor Frankl's book.
Man's Search for Meaning.
And just life-changing, just this fabulous, just his ability to consider that you get to choose under the most horrific conditions how you react to circumstances that are around you. And I try and live my life like that, and I try and get people to listen to advice in that sort of context of saying, look, this is all... Your world is about how you choose to behave when these circumstances occur, and you get to be who you want to be. You can't stop the husband or the wife from behaving badly. You cannot control it. You never will. Do not fight a fight you can't win. Yeah. Play your own game. You choose. You choose to have dignity and hold your head up and behave the way you want to behave. But also, if you choose to go crazy, you have to accept the circumstances and take responsibility for your own behaviour.
Totally. Because there's consequences in whatever we do. There's consequences in any choice that we make. And divorce is no different.
Yeah.
You know, I think that this has been a really enlightening show and a really insightful show, because it puts the responsibility squarely back with each person. But what I love about your approach to this that's so refreshing, Pete, is that we're not resisting reality. We're not still holding on to a past that was. We're actually now, you're encouraging us to move forward to a whole new reality, press the refresh button. And I don't know about most people. Well, actually, I probably do. You give most people the opportunity to hit refresh and they would probably go, that would be great.
Oh, the decisions that so many times we've made some decisions in our lives that haven't been perfect.
Absolutely.
And then don't you how many times you say, if I only knew what I know now.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. I think it's funny that even when we were talking about this before we sat down, we talked about both wearing pink, about bright, colourful, positive colours, that it is a serious topic. But if you approach it with your cup half full and look at the opportunity to make the most of a difficult situation and push through it and come out with great individual results, then it's a pink day. It's a good
beautiful
thing. You know, it's never going to be easy.
Yeah.
But you get to choose to make the most of it. And if you do that and you do it positively with some forethought and some good goal setting and some good advice and some good support, then I think you'll get the best possible outcome for yourself, and you get to move on. And that's always important. You don't want to live potentially, lamenting over the complexities of a divorce for the rest of your life. You want to, like you've done, it was a long time ago, you park it and you move on, and it doesn't enter your mind anymore. I think that's a great way to end up after something like that.
And it does take a bit of time. So from the divorce to the reconciliation, whichever way it goes, it takes a bit of time, and taking that breath and collecting yourself. And I guess getting your goals clear, but getting support, getting the right people in your corner, it makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
This is huge. I think it's really worth thinking about. There's a whole, your white paper, is that where
so when it's finished, I'll give it to you and we can put it up on the website. And
oh, great.
Yeah, and it'll really be a really good starting guide to saying, here you are, you've walked in the door, this has happened to you. Yeah. Here's a great set of rules.
Oh, how fantastic.
Just a great way of saying, this is how you can take control of this next part and build some muscles around some great decisions that you'll make.
And navigate your way through what that means
Absolutely.
Financially.
Yeah.
And from a practical point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Good on you. That's great. So keep your eyes out for that white paper. As soon as it's finished, trust me, it's going to be on the website. And we're going to give you guys access to it. What's a website that our viewers and listeners can actually track you down on, Pete?
If you go to www.varria.com.au, there's a whole host of information on there.
And the name of your property lawyer that you're working with?
The divorce lawyer.
The divorce lawyer, property lawyer. What am I thinking?
Phillips Family Law in Brisbane.
Phillips Family Law in Brisbane. He sounds like an amazing man.
You'd do yourself a great favour and get him on at some stage.
I was going to say, we've got to get him on the couch.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Oh, how awesome. Well, this has been a fabulous show and enlightening and insightful. When it comes to divorce, oftentimes we feel completely out of control, and I think that this is a way to start to put us back in the driver's seat of our lives. Thank you, Pete. You've been amazing as always.
Thanks again.
Thank you for tuning into Carren's Couch this week. It's been an absolute treat to share the show with you yet again. Hopefully it's been insightful, hopefully it's been interesting and a little bit thought-provoking. Join us right here next week on Carren's Couch, but don't forget to post your questions on this page. Anything that you want to know about finances, anything that you want to know about future and success, Pete's our man. So post all of your questions on this page or on our Facebook page. Also, if you're listening on podcast, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and tell everybody that you know how awesome Carren's Couch really is. We're going to see you right here on Carren's Couch again next week. Thanks for tuning in again. Bye for now.